Take you to KwaZulu-Natal, where the alleged drug kingpin Yaganathan Pillay, better known as Teddy Mafia, is being buried in Durban. He was killed at his home on Monday. Immediately after the murder, those believed to be responsible were beheaded and set alight. eNCA's Dasan Tathia is in Shallcross at the funeral and joins us now for an update. And Dasan, it was a shocking incident that not only shocked the community of Shallcross, but also the entire country, and raised to the surface issues around, that community that have to do with crime and relations with police and the likes. How is the burial of the man known as Teddy Mafia going?
Well, Tula, certainly, I think it's an event that has shocked people far beyond Shallcross, but also across the country. I mean, many people have been commenting on the gruesome nature of those murders that we heard about, and I guess also saw to a certain extent because of those videos that were circulated on social media. But the good news, I guess, if there is any, is that the events today, the funeral of Yaganathan Pillay, or Teddy Mafia, has been fairly peaceful. The only issues that have really arisen thus far are around the COVID-19 regulations. You can see it's still taking place behind me now. The family is about to wrap up. That's the priest addressing the family. There had to be several reminders to the people that had come through to the funeral not to crowd in that little area where the funeral is being held. Many people wanting to go in and see his face for one last time. Also to see that coffin that has been highly spoken about. You know that leading up to the funeral there were reports that there would be quite an extravagant coffin, one that was decorated with diamonds and gold trimmings, and that's exactly what had come out of that hearse a short while ago. And the family, in speaking to us briefly before the proceedings got underway, said that certainly no expense had been spared in ensuring that they give Pillay a proper send-off. Despite his checkered past and his reputation, especially with police, saying that he had had many run-ins with them over a number of issues like around drugs and illegal firearms in this community and in this space where the funeral is taking place now, he is still someone that is highly respected. But just as those proceedings continue, I want to bring in now Brigadier Jane Naika. Brigadier, if you'll just join me. Firstly, we know that there have been certain concerns over the COVID-19 regulations and whether they've been adhered to. What is the latest update from the officers here?
Look, that was our biggest concern. We didn't want the regulations to be ignored. So the police at Chatsworth met with the family yesterday, and the family said they are fully aware of the regulations and they're going to ensure that they comply with the regulations. And we've seen even today that they actually themselves were turning people away, informing people that they were not going to be allowed into the house due to the regulations. The other concern was obviously these are very narrow roads, and we knew there was going to be a congestion. So we've blocked out roads, we've made certain roads one-way roads, and we have the Metro Police that are assisting us to manage the traffic flow into this area. So most of the roads are closed, it's only accessible by pedestrians.
What's the relationship like now between the police as well as the family and community members? We know that on Monday when the incident took place there was a lot of hostility. In fact, to a certain extent, police were stopped from performing their duties.
Look, the family has to be honest, the family has been cooperating with police, especially around the funeral arrangements. They were fully in agreement that the regulations cannot be flouted and they will comply. We did have, I'm told that community members did try to gain entry to the premises, and they were told by the family at the gates that they will not be allowed in. And so since then it's been quiet. I see the family's also taken the extra measure of putting a big screen TV out on the road so that people can actually watch from their houses and from the road.
Brigadier, obviously I can't leave this conversation without talking about the investigation itself. I mean, there are lots of people wanting to know who those two men were, the ones that were beheaded here on the road, not far from where we're standing from. There is video evidence. There are so many questions about this investigation, and we know that the Provincial Organised Crime Unit has taken over. Where's that investigation at this point?
Well, absolutely. With regards to the two men, they still remain unidentified. According to the family, they know that they are friends of Mr. Pillay, but they didn't know them personally, so they can't tell us who they are and where they are from. So we have the victim identifications section from the SAPS that is assisting us to identify them and locate their next of kin. The Provincial Organised Crime Unit, as I said, have taken over the investigation. There's a lot of unanswered questions, and I think that's been complicated by the fact that there are only 2 people that can actually tell us what happened on that day are now dead, so that's making our investigation much more difficult. But detectives tell us they're going through everything methodically, and they have been speaking to people that can give us some of the answers, so we're quite convinced that they are on a good path in terms of the investigation.
Thank you very much, Brigadier J. Nakatula. Certainly that investigation has a lot to uncover. One of those things is where the guns that were used in these murders that we saw here on Monday. But although Mr. Pillay will be buried shortly, we understand that his body will go from here to the Shallcross Cemetery in a little while. The saga is far from over, because one of the important parts of finding out exactly what happened is also identifying who those 2 men were, the ones that were beheaded in broad daylight in this community.
Not to detract from the gravity and the seriousness of the whole situation around crime in that area and the role allegedly played by this man, Dassen, but there's an element of intrigue around his life and now his funeral, isn't there? I mean, this whole talk of a casket that's laced with diamonds, and also the question of whether or not we were going to see, you know, if someone was associated with gangsterism, allegedly, you know, there's always that kind of intrigue as to when they're getting buried, what will that look like in terms of, you know, people coming through with guns exposed and the likes.
Well, it's interesting that you talk about guns exposed to us, because just a little while ago down there we saw some police officers actually approaching the family as well, because there was one of the mourners that had apparently had a firearm that was exposed, but fortunately they did engage with that individual and they came to an agreement. But I think when you talk about that intrigue, you just see it all over social media. So many questions, people asking about the details of this funeral, how this man had lived this life of being, again, a suspected drug lord in this area. How is it that he had had all these run-ins with police but was still out here? And I think even if by just looking at the pictures that you're seeing now, you can see even the high-end vehicles that have been used for this funeral. There was a bagpiper that had walked down the coffin, that very extravagant coffin that I spoke about was being carried down by members of the family as the family and friends had chanted Viva Mafia. You could see that there was a very high level of respect and loyalty around this individual, and to them, although we have all of this other information and we've seen the court cases and we've seen the arrests, to them he was still a leader in their community, and he's someone that will be respected long after his burial today.
All right, eNCA's Dassen Tathia out there in Durban. Thank you for that report there on the burial of the man who was known as Teddy Mafia in the area of Shallcross in KwaZulu-Natal.